Hi, how's it going? Zach D Productions here, and I am here for a discography review for you guys. So for this discography review, we'll be talking about the post-grunge, hard rock, whatever you want to call them, legends, Breaking Benjamin. Now, Breaking Benjamin, if you didn't know, they were one of the first bands I ever got into. I often do point to them as my first band ever getting into. Like, if someone were to ask me, which band was the band that got me introduced to the music that I'm into today, I usually point to this band. There was a moment in time where Breaking Benjamin was my favorite band of all time. This was an opinion I had when I was 15 or so. Not really my favorite band nowadays, but, I still dig their music. I still think they're a very good band for sure, and they arguably have no bad albums in their discography. Now, yes, there are some better than others, of course, but we'll talk about those. We'll get there. So I believe Breaking Benjamin is from Pennsylvania, I want to say. Like, that's where they first formed, which is pretty cool because, well, for those who know me well enough, I'm from Pennsylvania myself, so yeah, very cool information. So, in their early days of the band, you can kind of tell that they're taking some pieces of influences from other subgenres of metal and rock. They're taking some stuff from nu metal, they're taking some stuff from more, psychedelic stuff like Tool. You can especially hear that in their debut album. You also hear some Korn as well in their debut. So, yeah, and, this is how they started out. It's clear that this was the type of music that they wanted to make, at least for the first part of it. And then they kind of moved on to doing more mainstream sounding stuff. Their more recent stuff is a lot more accessible now, but let's go ahead and talk about their albums. So it started off with Saturate, their debut, and I do think it's a solid album. Probably my third favorite Breaking Benjamin album, if I'm being honest. And I'll get to my second and first favorite albums when we get there, but I would probably say this is my third favorite from the band. Some people might have it at number one. Some people actually have this album last, and I think the reason that a lot of fans have this album ranked last is just because it's the least accessible one. Like, it's more raw, it's not as mainstream sounding or whatever, kind of sounds of its time, you can maybe say that. But, I think it's a strong album. This album really does show the sort of those influences that I mentioned earlier, plus a little bit of grunge influences going on here as well. Yeah, some really great tracks on here, like Wish I May, Polyamorous, which is a big song for them. That was really the song that put them on the map, I believe. You also got Natural Life, which I think is kind of an underrated song. You also have Water, which is, I want to say, one of the heavier tracks on the album, riff-wise at least. You also have Shallow Bay, which I think is pretty good as well. But yeah, there is some good songs on here for sure. Again, I wouldn't say that it's their best album, but yeah, I mean, it might be one of their best again. But yeah, Saturate, really good album. Really good start to their discography for sure. And then we got We Are Not Alone. Now, I'm not sure how popular this opinion is, but this is probably my least favorite Breaking Benjamin album. But even in saying that, I still think the album is pretty good. To me, it's a step down, a major step down from Saturate. To me, just the songs aren't as strong, and when it comes to which album I think has Ben Burnley's weakest vocal performance, I would say that this one does. But, the album, it still has some really good songs, like So Cold. I mean, So Cold is just a highlight in their discography, and not just in Breaking Benjamin's discography, but you can maybe say in this type of music, this 2000s hard rock scene. But yeah, really great song for sure. Can't go wrong with it, and that's what starts off the album, and it's a great way to start off the album, maybe one of their best opening tracks. I think Follow is a pretty good song. You also have Sooner or Later, another highlight on here for sure. To me, this album does have some of their weakest songs though, like Believe, and Rain. Never was crazy about these songs. Honestly, these songs are just kind of meh for me, but I mean, they're not awful or unlistenable or anything. They're just kind of meh for me. But yeah, overall, it's a pretty good album, but to me, it's not one of their best, and if I'm honest, I think it's their weakest. But next, we got my personal favorite Breaking Benjamin album, and that is Phobia. And I know a lot of fans would say the same thing, that this is their favorite as well, and for understandable reasons. I mean, I think that this album has some of their best songs and some of their best songwriting and things like that. Just the overall vibe and sound of this album, it really does stand out, not just in Breaking Benjamin's discography, but in the world of this type of music, this type of post-grunge hard rock stuff. But of course, you do have the iconic The Diary of Jane. This is the song that really boosted them up, you could say. Really helped them gain a lot more popularity, helped them get more in the mainstream, you could say. But yeah, great song, and of course one of my favorites on the album. Same with Breath. I really like that song. That song has some great guitar work, great vocal work from Ben. And you also have You, which is a bit darker. I really like that one as well. Evil Angel is one of my personal favorite Breaking Benjamin tracks. What else you got on here? Unknown Soldier, which I think is kind of an underrated song. Yeah. I mean, you have other highlights on here as well, like Had Enough and others, but yeah, great album for sure. Honestly, I don't think you can go wrong with any of the songs on here. I mean, if I had to choose a least favorite song on here, I'd probably go with You Fight Me, but even that song is okay. But overall, pretty strong album. Definitely worth checking out for sure if you have not. So next we get into what I consider my second favorite Breaking Benjamin album, and that is Dear Agony. This album here really did change the game for me. This was the album that got me into music, basically. I mean, you really could say that. This was the album that helped me get into this type of music, and then I got into heavy metal and all different types of metal and rock even. But yeah, great album. It still holds up, I think. I do return to this album a lot for nostalgia reasons. I mean, this album basically has no skips, maybe besides the song Hopeless. That song to me is probably the weakest on the album, but even in saying that, it's not bad. But yeah, you have really great songs on here. Fade Away, I Will Not Bow, which is another, you could say, a commercial hit for them. That was another song that helped them boost up a little more, and that was one of my first Breaking Benjamin songs, one of the first ones I ever checked out. You also have Crawl, which is a bit more emotional but also heavy. Give Me a Sign, which is probably my favorite of the singles on the album. Really like the emotion to that song. The title track, maybe the most emotional Breaking Benjamin song that there is. Really like that one. You also have Into the Nothing, which I think is kind of underrated. Without You, probably another one of my other favorite Breaking Benjamin tracks, but yeah. Great album. In this album here, they did take things a little bit darker, not just with the lyrics, but also with the sound and vibe of the album. And I would say it works for them. It absolutely works for them. So, Dear Agony, really good one for sure. Highly regarded as one of their best, and I think any Breaking Benjamin fan can agree that this is easily one of their best. So, Breaking Benjamin, they took a break for a little bit. Ben Burnley ended up getting new band members. He ended up getting a former Red member and new members, but they all came back, formed this new lineup with Breaking Benjamin, and they came out with this album here, Dark Before Dawn. To me, not one of their best, but still a pretty good album. I remember when they released Failure as a single and just thinking, holy crap, this band is back. They still sound like Breaking Benjamin, and that's one of the things that I give credit to Breaking Benjamin for, especially during this time, is it didn't seem like they've ever had a misstep. Like, even with this new lineup, they still sound like Breaking Benjamin, and that's exactly what I thought when I heard Failure for the first time, when it came out as a single. But yeah, Failure, great song, one of my favorites on the album. It's just a signature sounding Breaking Benjamin song. It's just really good. You also have Hollow, Close to Heaven, The Great Divide, Ashes of Eden, which is more on the melodic side. Like it's more melodic driven. Seems like it's taken some inspiration from Red a little bit, like taking some inspiration from one of their ballads or whatever, which is pretty cool. But you do have a Red former band member on this album, so there is that. You also have Defeated, and I want to say that was another one of the singles too. Really like that song too. So yeah, that song has great emotion, great vocal deliveries from Ben, of course. But yeah, pretty good album. Not one of their best, but still solid for what it is. And then we got their last album, Ember, which I do think is a step up from Dark Before Dawn. A little bit better, not much better. Like, I wouldn't say that it's so much better, but it's a little bit better. But yeah, some really good songs on here. Red Cold River, Tourniquet, Psycho, Torn in Two, which I believe is a Dark Before Dawn B-side song. Like, that song was supposed to be on Dark Before Dawn, but it made it to this album. I think it's a pretty good song, though, and I'm glad that they included it. You also have Blood and Close Your Eyes, which is more emotion-driven, but yeah, really good album for sure. Again, probably a step up from Dark Before Dawn. Now, this album, it does have another one of my least favorite Breaking Benjamin songs, and that song being The Dark of You. I know that that's going to be an unpopular opinion, but it is what it is. When I listened to it, I thought, it's okay. You know, I wasn't that thrilled about it, but I mean, it's not unlistenable or anything, but I'm just not that big of a fan of it, to be honest. But there you have it. Ember, pretty good album. In this album here, it's heavier than Dark Before Dawn, and I think the heaviness went pretty well here. Pretty good album. So there you have it. That is my discography review for Breaking Benjamin. Overall, pretty strong discography, and I know that they've released Aurora, their acoustic album that has like reimagined songs. That acoustic album has honestly not held up very well. I haven't really returned to it since the year it came out, actually, but I mean, it's not horrible, it's not bad by any means, but it's just, I would rather listen to the original stuff, you know. But overall, pretty strong discography, and I think Breaking Benjamin are working on a new album, so that is exciting. And yeah, not many albums, but pretty strong discography so far anyway. So let me know what you think. Are you a fan of Breaking Benjamin? What album is your favorite? What album is your least favorite? How would you rank their albums? What are your favorite songs? Do you have any least favorite songs? Do you agree with a lot of my opinions? Feel free to let me know. So on that note, thanks for watching and have a good one.